Hi, welcome to NDE TV. I'm Peggy Robinson. Today's guest is Christy Kanooble, and she's going to tell us about her near-death experience. Hi, Christy.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Well, you're welcome. I'm anxious to hear your story, and you start wherever you like and take as long as you like.
For me, it was when I first turned 18 years old. I went to school 2.5 hours away from my home in Philadelphia, and it was in the Pocono Mountains. And I loved it at first. As the youngest of three children, it was exciting for me to finally have a chance to spread my wings, so to speak, and be on my own. Um, to keep up with my schedule because I didn't have much training when it came to that kind of thing to make sure I wasn't slipping in my grades. I used to spend a lot of time at the library at school because I had a coffee shop attached, and I feel like that's enough said. But it kept me focused on what I needed to do. And when I used to sit outside of the coffee shop, there used to be a man. I call him T. I don't know what his real name is, to be honest. I'd see him every day. It was kind of, you'd see him talking to people or in passing, he'd hold the door open, do that kind of wave thing or the head nod that's so popular now. Um, and then it started to get into conversations, like where he was from. We'd talk about his family, favorite colors, things like that. To where I kind of felt like he was not necessarily a friend, but definitely an acquaintance, something I felt comfortable with. And it was 6 months later after seeing him all the time. Now I knew he didn't live on campus, and that wasn't abnormal because a lot of people didn't. They tended to travel to school, especially because he was maybe I'm going to say maybe mid 30s at this point.
How old were you?
I had just turned 18.
Okay.
When I went to college, I was still 17. So
Okay.
um, so 6 months go by of seeing him all the time and making these conversations and small talk. And I can't remember the time of year it was, but I know that it was still kind of cold outside because I remember I had a big jacket on. And I remember opening the library door and the wind kind of hit me in the face. And I was in my head like, this walk is going to suck, because it's all downhill, especially in the Poconos, to go back to the dorm, especially at night. I happened to be walking out and I happened to see T, and he asked if I wanted a ride home. Now, in a normal situation, I probably would have caught some red flags here. But at the time, it was late. I was tired. I was probably hungover, to be honest. I was drinking a lot. I was, fresh 18 in college. I was definitely drinking. Um, but I accepted the ride. And it was when we got in the car, I had buckled my seatbelt and I pulled out my phone to text my roommate and my friends to let them know, like, hey, I'm on my way. I'm getting a ride. And he snatched my phone. And it was kind of like right there. I was like, this is not good. Um, he ended up turning onto a highway instead of turning down the road to go to my dorm. And I'm a very headstrong, tough girl. And I'm not the kind of girl that begs. I was like, turn this car around now, demanding in a situation I should not have been demanding. So if that tells you anything about my personality, he started going on about how nobody knew where I was. And he was right. How my family would never see me again. And, how we're just going to go for a ride and all this other stuff. And I was fighting tooth and nail, but verbally. I didn't want to get aggressive physically because we were on a highway. Um, he pulled off the road a couple of times, and it's kind of like guardrailed roads. You go up in the Poconos where it kind of leads off into nowhere, and there's like an entrance to woods there. And he kept pulling off to the same spot. He did it twice. The first time he had gotten out, he tried to pull me from the car, and I was not having it. I was kicking, punching, screaming, all of it. And he got frustrated. He got back in the car, went back to the highway, and he kept going up down the same strip of highway. And I was banging on windows and I'm like waving out to anybody driving by. But at this point, the sun is starting to go down. So nobody's paying any mind to what's going on in this car. And at this point, I'm like, listen, like, I'll do whatever you want. Just take me home. Like, I just want to go home. I can't do this. Like, I need to go home. There's people waiting for me. Like, I'm trying to convince this man that he is wrong and that people know where I am and that they will find me, even though I knew for dead certain they did not. Because back then, phones did not have the GPS capabilities that they do now. They just didn't. It wasn't like
That was
time right.
smart at 18. I wouldn't have thought of that.
Yeah. So in the midst of this second pull off onto the highway, he pulled off again. I guess he got frustrated with me, trying to convince him because again, I don't beg. I wasn't begging. I was trying to convince this man because I am very manipulative when I want to be and persuasive. Um, he pulls off again, tries to pull me from the car again. I am still not having it because I still have some fight left in me, but I'm getting tired. It's been close to 6 hours at this point. Um, when we get back onto the highway, he pulls out his stuff. I'm just going to call it stuff to
Yeah.
sweeten it up a little bit. And he tries to grab my hand to put it on there. And I was like, absolutely not. And I grabbed the wheel instead and yanked it. And we kind of veered off the road a little bit. And I think that kind of gave him some clarity that I was not having it today. Like I was not the one. Because you could see the frustration and kind of like a little bit of defeat in his eyes, but he just like kept telling me, no one's gonna find you, no one knows where you are, you know, we're gonna go to my house and things like that. I'm like, no, we're not going to your house, like I had any control in the situation. I look back at it now and I laugh, but at the time I was like, I'm gonna convince this man to take me home. Like it's gonna happen. The third time he had pulled off of the road, I guess we had low gas at this point because it was like the final straw for him. Because I saw him put my phone in his pocket because he had it in his driver's side door. Because I went over and I tried to reach over to grab, but it wasn't there. This time he had a knife. And at that point, it was like, you gave it your best shot, kid, in my head. Um, we go into the woods by knife point, and I can't see anything. I have no idea where I'm going. I remember smells and I remember like kind of hearing noises where the road would be, but we were pretty deep in there. Probably about a 15 to 20-minute walk in, if I had to guess at this point. And it was when we got in there that he assaulted me repeatedly. And I was kind of not even there. I was like, it is what it is. Um, there's nothing worse than knowing you're going to die and that no one will find you if you do. There's no worse feeling than that.
Mhm.
And it was kind of like a villain story after that because when he was done, he got dressed and he had an obsession with my hair. It's when he told me that he did not even go to my school. He was there, I guess, with a flat tire, and he saw that I sat by myself and that I didn't touch my phone a lot, and that not a lot of people talked to me. So to him, that meant I was an easy target. And he stalked me for 6 months to get some kind of rapport so that he could offer me the ride home. And he sounded like he didn't have very good education the way he talked. He called me babe a lot, and he's like just stroking like leaves out of my hair while he was telling me. And at this point, I'm just like, to me, I'm gone. Like I'm just laying there and just it's over with. I knew he had a knife. I knew I didn't have my phone. I didn't even know where I was. Like there was not a chance in hell I was getting out of this one. There was no fight left in me, no matter what. And then he started talking about my mother. And, what would your mother say if she found out that you were accepting rides from strangers? And what would your mother say if she knew where you were right now? What would your mother say if she knew that you were late to class 3 times this week? And just like crazy stuff. And as soon as he said my mother, it kind of snapped me back because my mother is a very tough woman, very. And I was like, my mother would never go down like this. And I'm not either because I am my mother's daughter. And I was. And at this point, he has a knife and I don't want to get into the details, but there was cutting and it was like play to him. It was almost like a kink or a BDSM style thing because he'd run it over certain parts of my body with like just enough pressure to draw a little bit of blood, but not enough. Like,
You mean with his car?
with the knife. We're
Oh,
in the
sorry.
woods at this point. His car is left where
That's
we
right.
live.
Okay. So he's running this knife over you.
Yeah. And I mean, he like destroyed most of my clothing. And I kind of felt like a ball of energy at this point because now I'm getting mad. not only at myself for getting myself into this situation, but I'm mad at him because now you're talking about my mother right before you're going to try to kill me. And that, in my book, is a no. So, I mean, in any book, it's a no. But I feel like that kind of just like flipped the switch for me. So I was like, I'm not going down like this. I'm not. And in my head, I'm like, I'm ready to attack. I'm ready to pounce on this guy as soon as I get the chance. With the little energy I've left, I got one more fight left in me. And at this point, he's already dressed. But when he was pulling up his pants to get dressed, I heard a thud. So when I originally thought he dropped the knife, and up until I went later on, after I'm about to tell you, I found that it was my phone that he had in his pocket. He had dropped it when he was getting dressed. But at this point, I'm laying there with my eyes closed. I don't even want to look at the situation. I can feel him stroking my hair. I can feel him like leaning on me. And I couldn't look. Especially when it came to the knife play. Like I did not want to see me go, I guess you could say.
Right.
And it was kind of like unreal how the next section and my survival played out, because at this point I'm gone. I'm done. No matter what I say, like I'm my mother's daughter and I'm not going down like this. There was that inkling in the back of my head, like, you can fight all you want, but you don't have any way to save yourself here. And there is no one coming. You grow up listening and watching Disney movies, like there's somebody that's gonna come save you. That's not true. um After a while with knife play, and he told me his whole, I used to stalk me in the library and like hide in the stairwell, and how I happened to drop a book in front of him, and that's when we first started speaking, which it was. I was coming out of the bathroom and I had dropped the book and he handed it to me. And I said thank you, and we got in a conversation, and then I'd see him outside and I'd wave and the conversation. And I'm in my head like, oh my God, like this is real right now. Like this is real. He didn't even go to my school. Like I didn't know if anything he told me up until this point was true. That's why I call him T. I don't know if that's his name. And it was, he started adding more pressure with the knife after he started talking about my mom. I'm thinking he had some issues with his own, I'm assuming. Um, but it was right when he started adding more pressure and it really started to cut, there was a loud noise. And to me, when I tried to figure out what the sound was, it sounded like walking, like crunching, like somebody was coming. And I knew he heard it too because he jumped up and then he took off and he was gone. But I
Oh,
laid there for maybe, if I could guess, like 20 minutes, a half an hour, because I was terrified. I was like, is there more people coming? Like, is this going to get worse than I think it is? Like, is he coming back? Does he know where I am? Like, do I know where I am? Like, what? Um, and I kind of laid there and made peace with the fact that I'm gonna live, you know. And I get up and I'm trying to, straighten myself out. Like, all right, if I stay here, that's it. It doesn't matter what he did. I'm gonna die anyway. I have to figure something out. So I started crawling around because I remembered hearing a thud, but I didn't know what it was, and I wanted to see what it was. I was like in my head hoping it was something that was going to help me, and it was. It was my phone, but my phone was dead. So it wasn't that it was any help, but I had my phone, and that was like the first step for me. Like, I'm gonna live. I'm gonna live. Like, I am gonna live out of this, and I'm cut and my shoes are wrecked, and my clothing is ripped and shattered and my entire being is shattered. And I just remember walking. I didn't even pick a direction. I just walked. And it kind of felt like I was being guided, honestly. I don't like to get too deeply into the spiritual aspect, but in my head, thought my mother was guiding me home. And I did. I walked home miles. I couldn't even tell you how many.
did you feel like you heard her voice or?
I saw her. It was like bright and there's no face, but it looked like my mother. The shape, long hair, everything. And I just followed it. And I had gotten to the road And once I got to the road, I just kind of started walking. But I just remember, and it's so strange, but at this time, while I'm going through the woods, all I could think of the was the poem by Robert Frost. And the woods are dark. The woods are lonely, dark, and deep, but I've got miles to go before I sleep, and miles to go before I sleep. And I just kept repeating that in my head. And I made it back to my dorm, and I told nobody. My roommate wasn't home. I didn't have to explain why my clothes were destroyed. I put my phone on the charger and I took a shower and I went to sleep.
Do you know why
And
you didn't tell anybody?
I didn't think they believed me. I didn't tell anybody until this year what happened to me. And that was
How
13
old are
years
you
ago.
now?
I'm 31.
Isn't that strange how we just hold it inside like a secret?
I didn't think anyone would believe me. And to be honest, that part with the attempted murder, I did not know until this year when I finished my trauma narrative. Up until that point, I thought I was kidnapped and I remembered finding my way home. And to me, I was embarrassed. It's like, you were 18 and you got kidnapped. In my head, that's how I think of things. And I mean, I spent my whole life being told to suck it up. So that's what I did. I sucked it up. And it caused a lot of damage to my brain and my mental health in the long run, unfortunately. But this year I finished my trauma narrative and I am more comfortable telling my story. There's more details when it comes to the sexual assault and the knife play, but that I don't feel like is necessary to tell people. Why burden someone with that kind of
Uh-huh.
information? It's just toxic, I feel, to get that far into detail. Um, and I think that's kind of why I didn't tell my mother either, even after I found out the full story of what happened. And because it kind of changed my mindset from that's embarrassing to like, wow, that's incredible, that I survived.
Right.
You unlock those recessed memories. And it was like, what? This whole time I thought it was this, but it was this. And even after I wanted to tell my mother, it was like, I don't want my mom to know that happened to her daughter. I don't want my mom to hurt with the burden of that information. Um, so I tell my story to others. And I hope that by telling my story, that other people will come forward if they have a similar story. Because in my case, there is nothing I could have done, even if I spoke up. I don't know if the color of the car was real in my head. I don't know his name. He didn't go to my school. I didn't think to ask to see camera footage because I was traumatized. I formed a really bad drinking habit after that. It lasted a really long time. Night terrors, disassociation. It still happens to this day. Um, for example, I went to a show last night. I do comedy, and there was a BDSM like live show. It was like educational, and at one point, he kind of ran something across her stomach, and it didn't matter what it was. I was no longer in that room. I was smelling trees that were not there. I was feeling dirt under my feet that did not exist, and I had to just bolt outside and kind of I have shoes on my feet, like bring myself back. I have a phone in my hand. That means I'm not where I was. I'm clicking my phone. I could hear it ringing. So it's on, just doing little things. I walked across the parking lot. I'm leaning against the car. I'm like, I am in a parking lot. I am good. I'm safe. I'm not there anymore. And it happens more often than I'd like to admit, but it's learning to know your triggers and not necessarily avoid them, but know how to handle them and bring yourself back. So
Yeah, PTSD.
I have CPTSD, yeah, complex. Because when I started opening up about my story, I seen a therapist in 2020. We were 6 sessions in, and my 18-year-old sister died, and it completely wrecked my brain even more. So, um, yeah, starting to dive into that trauma, and then having my sister that I considered one of my best friends. So I was the youngest of three. The other two didn't listen to me. She listened to me. We used to talk all the time. She'd ask me for advice. She made me feel valued. And she had just turned 18, just like I had.
How
And
did
it
she
just,
die?
it was an accidental overdose. She
Oh,
went to buy a Percocet for pain in her side, and they gave her something that was not Percocet. And unfortunately, her body couldn't handle it. She had died on the scene, and they brought her back. And then she was in a coma, but there was no brain function left. So we had to pull the plug. So that kind of really sent me on a really
Same
big downward
age
spiral. Same
that you
age.
almost died.
Yeah. And it was kind of like a shaming for me. It was like, why did I survive and she didn't? You know, what could I have done to save her? And I know there's nothing I could have done, you know, and I know there's no reason why I did and she didn't, you know, but that's how I felt in that time. And I lost weeks and months at a time, just disassociating, and I wasn't here in my head. And actually leading up to April of this year, I got really bad into drugs. I gave myself a heart attack at 30. And a week later, I tried to end my life. And I kind of went full circle for me, you know, from where I almost died and lost my entire identity to trying to end it myself, to start over and really learn who I am and accept what happened to me and do healthier things and not hate myself for surviving, you know, because that's what I had done. I hated myself for surviving,
Honey,
you
you're still
know?
in the woods.
Yeah, I was. Well, not anymore. I was for a
Good,
really long time.
good.
But I actually ended up, after I made my attempt, going to a mental institution. And when I went to that mental institution, it was the first time that I was by myself with no distraction. Up until then, I have a kid, I had two jobs. When I had time to myself, I invited people over. I never wanted to be alone. I didn't want to deal with that. I didn't want to think about it. And I didn't. But when I went to that hospital, I didn't have a choice. And I triggered for over 30 hours of just me running around this room, not sure where I am, seeing things that aren't there, screaming, you know, freaking out to the point where they had to drug me and put me down, until they got me a room, because it was bad. It was almost primal the way that things happen, and it wasn't until then that I realized just how much these kinds of situations affect the brain and how you function, because you lose control completely. And I got my diagnosis, and since then I've launched a giant mental health project, just diving into the different aspects of how it affects your brain in a digestible way for people and telling my story a little more. And I finished my trauma narrative as soon as I got out, you know, because now I had unlocked more memories. Because now I'm remembering sexual assault. And I'm like, wait a minute, what is that? Like, where did that come from? You know, and it was really just sitting down and writing it over and over and over and over again, you know, like a novel that I never had any intentions of publishing, that I really unlocked everything. It was like, I am so strong, like, and brave. And, you know, just like going through that with myself. And that's when I fell in love with myself again. It's like, I deserve more than I've been giving myself.
Did
I
you
deserve to
publish
speak up.
this?
I did not yet. I haven't. I'm still on the fence with how much I want to say when it comes to the violence of
Uh-huh.
it. Because I feel like if you're going to write a book about it, you should. But for me, I don't like to give that deep of detail because number one, it's painful to talk about. And it's painful to think about. I
Hmm.
feel that pain again when I talk about it. You know, I feel the knife when I talk about it. I can feel him touching my hair when I talk about it. And that's, you know, I don't want other people to feel that, I guess, you know, and I know that's kind of strange to say it like that, but I kind of like hold it back so that other people don't have to carry the full burden of what I went through, you know?
Yeah, people. My book's been out 5 years, and the first half is my childhood, and I had a similar situation to you. Not a knife, thank God, but similar situation. And even just last week, somebody's writing and say, "I read this, and it was so hard to read." It's hard
Yeah.
for them to read what we went through, and that's kind of a strange feeling.
It's almost
That
insulting, right?
it is. It's like I lived through it, but you can't read it. It's too hard. And I thought that too, like you when I was writing it. Like, who wants to read this? It's awful. Who wants to feel this? Nobody. Why am I writing this? But for me, I felt I had to tell the bad in order for people to appreciate the good, because I had some near-death experiences and some spiritual experiences along the way. And I just can't help but wonder, have you ever wondered if that white light that you thought was your mother in the woods could have been an angel?
I actually fully believe it was me. And I know that sounds crazy.
Okay.
Um, so at the time, it did. It was the shape. It looked like my mother. But when I went to that hospital, I was not there. And I really feel like I had an out of body experience. And I went back to myself to guide out. And it kind of, the way things happen and the details that lined up make me fully believe that that's true. That it was me that went back. It was me that was like, no, get up. It was me walking towards the situation, and I'm the reason that he ran. I saved myself, just not the way I conventionally thought I ever could. And, I led myself out of those woods because me now, I know exactly what happened, where it happened. I know exactly where it is. I Google mapped it after I did my trauma narrative because I needed to know if this was real or if this was some kind of delusion in my head because it felt like that after I did my trauma narrative. Like, there's no way this happened to me. There's no way. And I didn't know this much happened. Um, but yeah, I fully believe it wasn't necessarily an angel. I believe it was me. So I
Was
believe in
there
out of body experiences. So
was there a point you felt like you were out of body that you were looking down at what was happening?
I felt like when I was in that hospital the entire time, I was just watching it like a movie. And that was probably the worst of it. I think that was probably worse than being in it and living it. Like, I'm trying not to get upset, but to see a younger version of yourself just ready to die, like ready to give up and being mutilated was just horrible to watch. It was like, what if that was my child? What if that was my sister? That's in my head. So it was really hard to, but I watched it from the outside completely. Like I was watching a Lifetime movie that I didn't sign up for, with no commercials. At least we get commercial breaks with Lifetime movies.
Yeah. I was kidnapped and raped when I was 16, and I left my body. I prayed that I wasn't even on this earth. And just as he was approaching me, he took me to a tool shed. And suddenly I was out in the night sky looking down at earth. I was among the stars. And I could feel the breeze blowing my hair. I was a little tiny, like probably 80-pound, teenager, and had this long dark brown hair. And it was like the wind, like you're at a beach at night. That real peaceful, warm comfort. And I started thinking, wait a minute, I'm only 16. Am I going to go back? I don't want to be up here forever. And I kind of felt like when I was ready, I could go back. And then I was back and it was over. And he said to me, wow, I want a wife like you someday. And I took that as he must have meant easy. I must have laid there like a corpse because I was not physically in my body.
Yeah. I don't want to say that I left my body during my violent parts. I
Mm-hmm.
was there. I felt everything, but I just laid there with my eyes shut. It was like you said, I was kind of like a corpse. Because until he mentioned my mother, I was gone. I was ready to give up. I was like, I'm not fighting this anymore. It's been hours and hours. And it was literally the whole night. And it's why I have an affinity for the sunrise. Whenever I can, I'm out catching the sunrise in a new area, in a new place, in a new form, because that to me signified the end. That's where I was on a road that I was familiar with, and I knew I was going home. I knew I was going to be okay. So
Did I hear
sunrise
you
to me
say?
is,
I'm sorry, what?
I said the sunrise. It's when I knew I was going to be okay.
Did I hear you say you're a comedian?
I am.
Are
Yeah,
you?
I am. Only the most damaged could be comedians.
Really? That's
Yeah.
interesting. How long have you been doing that?
I'm on stage a little over 2 years. Yeah.
That's cool. Is there any YouTubes out there?
I do
Uh,
have a YouTube. Yeah.
what's it called?
Everything is under CA Kanooble, just like my name.
Okay.
Or you can
Okay.
go to my website. It gives you links.
Okay.
Yeah.
So were you cut very badly in this?
I was cut pretty badly, but not to a point where it left scars. It was just
Right.
kind of it took a while to heal. And it wasn't to where I was like incapacitated. It was just little cut. It was more of a torture for him at this point. He hadn't gotten to the real violence because he was just torturing me at this point. he was leaving nicks and cuts on my body in different places, and private places, just to, I guess, make a point. I don't really know. I can't even, I'm not even trying to explain it because I can't.
Yeah.
Um, but it was, when he started to really dig in, like he was really going to do some damage, that noise happened and he took off.
Did you ever see him again?
No, I never saw him again. I wish I had. I wish I had, because these hands are buy one, get one free, okay? No, what I know now, I say that as a joke to try to lessen the mood a little bit. But yeah, I really wish I had seen him again because I would want to know why. Why? But honestly, after that, I was not in that school for very much longer. I tried therapy, I tried antidepressants, but I didn't want to tell anybody what was wrong. I didn't want to tell even the therapist what happened because I was scared to. What would happen? Is this going to go to the police? Are they going to come for me? Like, is he going to come for me? And every day I'd go outside my dorm and I'd like change my hair. So I started dyeing and cutting and changing my hair a lot because I'm like, maybe he won't recognize me if he sees me. Because if he finds out I'm still alive, he's going to come finish the job. Because in my head, he left me for dead. And I mean, I'm pretty sure any other person who's not like me probably would have died because we were miles into those woods. And I was badly to the point where walking that far should not have been possible, especially after riding in the car and the emotional and all of that, to just stand up and walk for miles to go
And,
home with no
yeah.
shoes,
And to
you
hear
know,
those footsteps, he thought somebody was there and he ran.
and he just took off like that easy. That easy. If I'd have known it was that easy, I would have threw a rock or something from the side. Like if I'd have known. But no, it sounded like distinct steps. Like it sounded like someone was coming. That's the best way I can describe the sound. It was crunching and like shifting of leaves. Like you could hear it. And I want to say it was like me coming into the situation, like, hello, later in my life, but I have no idea what that sound was other than divine intervention.
Yeah.
Somebody said, not yet. It's you've got work to do still. And I always say that in
Did you
order
feel
to
that? Did you feel that? The not yet?
no, I had given up completely. And it wasn't until I found my phone that I was like, not yet. Okay. That's when I was like, not yet. Because in my head, I'm like, this phone's gonna be charged. And it doesn't matter that I'm in the middle of the woods in the Poconos. I'm totally gonna have service. Like in my head, I'm gonna call the police right now. I'm gonna get a rape kit right now. And everything's gonna be fine. And my phone was dead. But I was like, you know what? I have my phone and I'm gonna go home right now. I'm gonna find my way home. And then I did. It gave me that hope and that like next, it kind of jump started my brain again. Like I'm not dead. I'm not defeated. Joke's on him. Haha, you failed. That's what now I'm getting cocky in my head. Later now that I look at it, but at that moment I was not cocky in any way. I was like, I'm getting the fuck out of here. I need to get out of here before he comes back. Like I'm giving a chance. Like let's take it. We gotta get out of here. Because I didn't know if he was coming back. I didn't know where he went. He could have been 3 trees away, just hovering and waiting.
Right.
So it was just like quick, go, and I'm out.
What would you say to a girl in that situation now about telling?
Speak up. I did irreversible damage to my brain, and I wasted half my life um, hating myself and with behaviors that stemmed from trauma that I didn't deserve, and I didn't have to accept. I lost my entire identity. I was 18. I barely knew who I was, and I developed behaviors with men, especially. It was very toxic to men. I treated them like crap. I kind of still do. It's a power struggle for me. I have to be in control at all times. And honestly, it's a little better now. I'm a little better with it, but it affected all of my personal relationships to where I didn't have any. I couldn't have a man spend the night because I was afraid if I woke up in the morning and saw somebody, I'd freak out. And I had night terrors. I'd wake up and screaming, or I'd wake up crying, or I'd wake up like in pain that wasn't there. Or I had delusions. I don't want to have to explain this to somebody, especially when you go through, your younger 20s and you're in the dating and you're dating multiple people, or you're in and out of relationships. I didn't want to have to keep explaining what happened to me. So I didn't explain it at all. And again, it did irreversible damage to my brain. Speak up, tell someone, even if it is just a therapist, even if it is just your doctor, even if it is just on a random app on Facebook or a random show, just speak up, say something, because you have a younger version of yourself inside of you that deserves to be heard. And I ignored her for a very long time. Don't make my mistake. That's my message.
And we shame ourselves for things we did not do. Somebody else did them, but we take on the shame. And I don't know why we do that, as females, like why we feel, because I guess because a young girl and sex is not something we can talk about. We don't want to explain those things. We don't want to discuss them. So it's easier to just not open our mouth, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. It's kind of a shame spiral. You don't want people to talk about you. You don't want people to ask questions. You don't want people to pity you. That's how I felt for a long time. Like, I don't want the pity. I don't want people, I'm so sorry that happened to you. Like, well, yeah, so am I, but I don't need to hear it. Or, oh, you're so strong. Like, I don't want to hear that either. I don't want to hear it. Just say, I'm glad you're here, and just keep it pushing. Or there's those people that are like, well, when did this happen? What date did this happen? Like, PTSD does not work like that. Trauma does not work like that. You get what you get. We're offering you the information we know. More may come later down the line, but we don't always have the full details. It's not like a movie that plays over in our head and we're like, oh yeah, from start to finish, like we're clicking through the station on TV. No, it comes in scattered bits and pieces, and you try to pull it together to make one cohesive and solid situation. And then once you kind of piece it together and you're rewriting it, it's like, okay, this is all familiar. This is how it happened. It doesn't necessarily mean I'm going to say, yeah, it was like 40 degrees and there was like a crisp chill. Like, I don't know. People like to ask those questions because they always like to debunk something that they did not experience. And that is another reason I didn't speak up much.
And I think too, we may not, I don't know about you or other people, but for me, I didn't say those words in my head. I was raped. I didn't own that because I didn't fight, because he had already took me to a lake, said nobody knows where you are. If I throw you in there, nobody will ever find you. So the time he took me to this tool shed and there's all those tools in there, I knew I couldn't fight, or he might use those tools on me,
Right.
and he'd already threatened to kill me. So to me, I wasn't raped. To me, I consented because I wasn't fighting and kicking and screaming like I had a few months prior when this man jumped out of the bushes and his brother helped him, and they pulled me off into a field and tried to rape me, and I screamed and screamed, and a guy overheard it come out on his porch and stopped it. Okay, I fought and I screamed, and I was like, you, a fighter. Like I'm in their face, running my mouth, and I had earlier in the evening, but now that I'm in these tools, I'm like, I shut down. And so I didn't say, that guy got statutory rape. He's what he got. Because I told him everything that happened, but I didn't know the legal parts of rape or about consent. I didn't understand, 16. It was in the 70s. So I said, yeah. When they asked me, did you have sex? I said, yes. Did I say I left my body and I wasn't there? Did I say I was afraid he would kill me? I didn't say those things because I didn't know those things were important. You know what I mean? Like a 16-year-old, they don't understand the legalities of, and if we did, then we could get rid of that shame that this was our fault, that somehow we consented because we were afraid and we didn't fight or whatever. Whatever,
Got into their car.
yeah, yeah, we got in the car, not to hitchhike. And you don't want to hear those words. Like you said, you don't want a person saying this and you don't want them saying that. So the solution is I won't say anything
Yeah.
and
Well,
nobody can hurt me.
I think to one degree, having that justice on your end, I mean, it may not have been what it should have been, but I feel like that gives you a level of peace too, knowing that like something came out of it. I feel like for me, it was like that's never going to happen. And it was kind of dealing with that struggle on top of it. It was like this man literally tried to end my life and tortured me all night and left me for dead. And I have no justice. And that's kind of part of the reason now why I'm telling my story too. This is my justice. This is me speaking of what happened because somebody should know. Because who knows who else he did it to? Who knows if he was successful? Who knows if he's dead or if he's alive or who he is or where he lives? No one knows. No one's ever going to know. And that's like kind of making that peace with that is another part of the hurdle too, beyond speaking on it. I'll get there. Forgiving your attacker for attacking you is a big step in healing, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. And accepting, you know, that you'll have no justice. I mean, even for you, that's not justice. Statutory rape, you know? You know what I mean when I say when you lay there and you know that you are done, there is nothing that you can do but just be a toy for your attacker, and to know that that's all they got, or to know that they never got caught. I think that's the worst part of all of it. It's like
Yeah.
now you feel worthless. Like it doesn't matter what I went through and how traumatizing it was for me. I'm not getting any justice. It's not worth looking into for anybody. It's not worth getting justice. And that's just, I think, the worst of it, to be honest.
Yeah. And I don't think, a lot of men that do these things, or understand what they take from you when they rape, because they're taking your control and they're taking your personhood, because you're saying no, you're saying let me out of here, you're saying take me home, you're saying all these things, and it does not matter. And when they have sex with you, you do not matter. The fact you do not want this, they know you don't want this, and they do it anyway. It's like you are a thing. They have reduced you to a thing that does not matter, and you're like become this hollow shell. So no wonder we have these out of body experience, because we like spiritually die.
Yeah, I agree. And you become worthless, even to yourself, for a long time. So you deal with it. You become worthless. You're not worth fixing that. You don't want to look back on it. You know, you just ignore it because you're not worth anything else. Because that's what you get reduced to in those moments. And that was not the first time that I'd been raped. It was the second. Um, and even the first time, it was the same thing. I didn't fight. I didn't say no. I just accepted my fate. You know, if I hadn't been out of the house, this wouldn't have happened to me. You know, I like punished myself unnecessarily both times. You know, I
How old
didn't
were you
fight.
then?
The first time I was 12.
12.
Yeah.
Did you try to tell anybody and they didn't listen, or
No, did not
you didn't
tell
tell them
anybody.
either?
I shouldn't have been out of my house. I was sneaking out. To me, I deserved it. If I hadn't been sneaking out of my house, it wouldn't happen. You know, that's in my head. It's just, how I coped with it. Like, well, if you'd listened to your mother and kept your ex in the house, it wouldn't happen. You wouldn't have been outside. Shouldn't have been running the streets, as she calls it. But in reality, I'd only gone across the street to knock for a friend of mine. And that's all it took. That's it.
Yeah,
Both times, there was no savior. It was just
I
me
actually had a
by myself.
shrink tell me I deserved it.
That's horrible.
Finally, in my 40s, I thought I want to go to counseling for this, and I went to a place in Worthington. It's Dr. Walker, and I had I guess it was a suicide attempt, but they blamed on Ambien. I was taking Ambien, and so they didn't hospitalize me, and I didn't take that much of my medication to actually, cause a suicide. But my brother, who had sexually abused me as I was growing up, trying to sexually abuse me as I was growing up, he is the one that found me at the house I grew up in when we were little, and him and his daughter, and I ran from him, and he caught up with me at the highway, And I didn't know till a few weeks later he had knocked me out cold. All I knew was I was unconscious. I had wet myself. The squad was backed up. They, into this little gazebo, and they took me to the hospital. I didn't know what happened. I assumed I must have took too much medication. They said, no, you hardly had anything. And then my neck got hurt, and my little boy said, Mom, it was where your brother had to hit you so you didn't run out on the highway. I'm like, I wasn't running the highway. I was running from him. And so when I was telling this Dr. Walker about it, he said, well, your brother raped you. I'm like, no, he did not. The squad was there. He said, well, next time, don't take an overdose and you'll know what's going on. Like, he blamed
Mm-mm.
me. He tried to put it in my head that my brother had raped me after he knocked me out cold from this, supposed suicide attempt. He wanted me to believe that my brother, I said his daughter was right there. It doesn't matter. He raped you. I said, he did not. And he said, I mean, yeah, I might have been out conscious, but I think I would have had some evidence, and I don't think it was broad daylight. And he said, well, don't take an overdose and you'll know what happens next time. I'm like, this is a therapist? Like, I'm never going to
You,
therapy again.
you know what? And that's kind of close to what happened to me when I went to my therapy for the first time. When I was in college and I started the antidepressants and I went to therapy in there, I'd had trauma growing up, just situations that a child should not have been in, not that they're any of my parents' fault. These things just happened. No, not everybody there's no guidebook and there's no, can't have 24-hour control over situations. But this therapist had me watching a ball go across the screen and he's asking me what happened. And mind you, I'm trying not to say what just happened to me at the same time. And he was trying to convince me that I was sexually abused as a child, which was not true. It's not true. All of my abuse was physical. There was no sexual abuse at all. And it left me feeling like I don't know what's real and what's not. And what is him telling me things and what I actually remember. Because a lot of my childhood memories are gone. I get bits and pieces, very little bits and pieces, just because of the consistent traumas that happen. But it's insane to me that you went through something almost similar where they're trying to convince you of something that was not real, knowing that you're already mentally not in a good place. You're already second guessing yourself. You don't know what happened. You know, you're going for guidance on what happened, and they're guiding you in the wrong direction and not listening to anything you have to say, which makes you feel even more worthless than you already feel in the situation, but also making you feel like your opinions and your experience was not valid because it's not the way that they described.
It makes me wonder if they were trying to see if we were lying by saying, okay, did this happen too? I think this happened. And if you were a liar, you say, oh yeah, that happened too. Oh yeah, that happened too. Kind of like a hypochondriac. You go to the doctor and you go in because your arm hurts. Well, does your toe hurt too? Oh yeah, my toe hurts too. Where everything hurts. Maybe they were doing something psychological to check, but that's not their job though. They're not
No,
investigators to trump us up like a cop to see if we're making stuff. We weren't making up a report. This is supposed to be a therapist helping us process what
no,
we went through.
I could see that if it was later down the line, you'd already been working on it for a long time because you do get delusions. Delusions are a real thing. Like I told you, sometimes I'm in the woods. That's a delusion. That's not real in that moment.
I
And
think
it
it's a
was a real
flashback.
situation. It is. But in the moment, it's a delusion because I'm really not there. A
Right.
flashback is just you see it in your head. This is a delusion. I'm really there. That's the difference. But that again, like you said, is not their job. When we're coming to them in these situations, we are broken. We are second guessing everything we know. Is it real? Is it fake? And for them to do things like that, to try to, like you said, I guess, do some kind of investigation. We're doing an investigation. Okay. Like you trying to convince us of things that don't happen is going to completely mess up our brains even more. And it did for me for a long time. I had to literally sit and just think, like, was I sexually assaulted as a child? Like no, I don't think I was, right? Like second guessing my, now I don't know if what I think is real. Now
Yeah.
I think
And what
I'm
evidence of
delusional.
that do they have? You know,
None.
you don't
Like,
have
where's
no
the proof?
evidence of anything. Like there was no
None.
evidence that my brother did anything like that. I just told him what happened, and the real abuse. I feel he should have addressed the fact that he had knocked me out cold. You know, that would have been nice. There's been some charges on him. He didn't need to hit me. He told everybody he did it, but he was like the hero because I was going to run out in the road. No, I wasn't running the road. I was running away from him. And he took that opportunity because I had just confronted him a few weeks before this at my mom's house about him sexually abusing, trying to sexually abuse me as I was growing up. And finally he admitted it in front of my mother. So he was really angry with me. He went out of the house. He was so angry my mom went out and babied him instead of me, who's, Mom, I told you all these years and you wouldn't believe me. And now he just admitted it and you go outside and baby him. And so he's really angry at me. And then he takes advantage of the situation I'm in where they're out looking for me. And, and he happens to be the one that finds me. And because he happened to come back from dinner with his wife and lunch with his wife, and maybe she's at this house we grew up because I just bought it. It was just an old shack. And so he stopped there and I just happened to be there and I was getting ready to leave because I went to sleep. I woke up, I had a really good nap and I'm like, okay, I gotta go back and get my vehicle. And oh my gosh, I feel so bad. I called a couple people and said my goodbyes, and I think I just need a rest. I just need sleep. And so yeah, I woke up and there he is. And so, but yeah, like they don't need to put in more. We've got enough, abuse here to work with. They don't need to make up stuff.
Yeah, it's kind of like we're putting a puzzle together and they're throwing extra pieces that don't belong in. And like you can't readily identify that they're not the right pieces for the box for the puzzle.
Yeah. It's like, why can't we focus on what happened instead of this make believe that you want to talk about? Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that kind of really messed me up even more because then I did not trust therapists. I did not trust
Right.
the doctors. And the help that I should have gotten a long time ago, I did not get because I didn't trust them. I didn't even like after that experience, that's when I went home. I said I was homesick. They put me on antidepressants. I wasn't homesick. I was confused and broken. Like I know I wanted my mother, but I couldn't tell my mother what happened. I couldn't. I could not bring myself to look my mother in the face and tell her what happened to me. Not that because I didn't think she would understand, but because my family is very emotional avoidance is very big in my family. We don't show emotions like that very often. And I didn't know how it would be received. I was the youngest of three. I never was validated in my opinions or my emotions. So to me, it was like, just stay quiet. Just, you're all right. You're home now. You're good. He can't find you here. But it didn't stop me from changing my hair every couple of years, or every couple of months or however I saw fit. Whenever I felt that fight or flight kick in, I had to change my hair or I had to do something different, get a different job, or don't work at all, stay home. You know, but yeah,
You always felt he was going to come back.
absolutely, yeah. I like in my head, I knew he was coming back. He would find me because he had to have known I didn't die. He had to have. Like he knew he didn't do enough damage, but maybe I guess in his mind it was enough. I don't know. Maybe he didn't realize like how resilient I am. I don't in my head, like he was fully convinced I was still alive and he was coming to get me. And I used to actually sew knife holes in my bra to carry a knife with me always. It's toxic for myself, and dangerous if I black out. Like, God forbid, somebody causes me to trigger really hard. What if something happens because I had that knife? Thankfully, I don't have that anymore. But I've moved on from that. I don't feel unsafe anymore.
That's the thing about telling or not telling. I mean, we don't have anyone to explain to us what not telling will cause in our lives. The anger, the acting out, maybe the drug abuse or alcohol abuse, self hatred,
Yeah,
not getting close to anybody, all those
yeah.
things.
It's like self-depreciating behaviors. Sleeping with whoever because you didn't care. You didn't have any sense of self-worth. Like for me, I still have absolutely no romantic attachment to sex. None. I I don't mean to bring like comedy into it, but I call myself a hoe. And I wrote a handbook because of it. of like my experiences and guidelines for women who are in, situations where they just want to be promiscuous. They want to be smart about it and still be, self-empowered. I teach a lot of self-empowerment now. Um, because I love myself again. And it took a long time for me to get here. So I feel like other women should not have to wait that long. So I teach whoever I can. But yeah, I still don't have an emotional attachment to sex. I still have issues with respecting men. I don't do relationships. I have maybe three long term my entire life because of it. Um, I, I like make a disgusted face even thinking about it. You see it, like I can't. I don't want that. I can't. So it affects you for the rest of your life. No matter how healed you are, no matter if you deal with it, it's going to affect you the rest of your life. How much and how deeply it affects you is whether or not you speak up.
Yeah. Well said.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, I'll come on screen with you and wow, that was a conversation, wasn't it?
Yeah,
And you're 31.
31. Yeah.
I'm 61. So, I mean, I've got 30 years on you of coping, and I don't know. We all have our, but good luck on the book. I'm thinking that maybe it will be a timing thing when the
Yeah.
time is right, when you're ready.
Yeah. For right now, I started doing a mental health project, and that's, my main focus. And it's like a podcast, but I've also made educational material for schools, for middle schools, for high schools, elementary schools. I've made pages, I've made infographics, I've made just tons of material for anybody who just wants to know anything about the 12 main mental health conditions. And the last episode of that podcast, I do tell my story, just like I told you now.
Good
And
job.
yeah, it was the first time I did, and it felt great. But I released all of the episodes but that one. I didn't tell anybody yet, but I did not. I just have to hit that publish button and it's gone. It's out there. It's in the world. And I don't have to worry about or carry it anymore. And, that was a big step in my healing. So that's probably something I'll do today. I think I'm ready now. The project launched on Sunday. That's when it should have been published. But um, I'm going to probably do it today just to get it out there and get my story out. Because when I first wanted to launch, it was in July. That was before I started doing interviews. Um, in July, I had an hour and a half long live on Facebook, and it was powerful because it was the first time that I said something and I broadcasted it. And I have a lot of followers for my comedy and stuff, and I was just like, I'm an attempted murder survivor, and this is how it's affected my mental health. And I'm tired of being quiet about it. And what I didn't expect was the amount of support because it felt like out of left field. Because that moment,
Awesome.
you feel like you're going to be alienated or no one's going to look at you the same. Everybody looked at me differently, yes. Everybody looked at me with more respect. Like, wow. So you went through all that and you do comedy? Like, where do you find the funny, But I had another woman who came on, and women from my high school came on, and people were just popping on to this live to talk about it. And at one point, it was like me, my co host, and another girl from my high school. And we were all like, we got raped and we didn't say anything. I was like, 3 out of 3 women on this screen were raped and said nothing. What does that tell you? What, that we deserved it, basically.
Yeah. And how many more were and can't come on and tell you?
Right. But with that live, I started doing interviews. And I've been doing interviews since, and I still do them up to this day with people all around the world with different mental health conditions to give an in depth look at their lives with their symptoms and how they manage their day to day and how it affects them and how it doesn't stop them from living a fulfilled life. But I've also been interviewing doctors and therapists and psychiatrists and, um,
Um,
you know, uh, life coaches,
I
anybody.
applaud you.
Thank you. And I've done probably close to, I'm going to say about 60 to 70 if I had to guess. And I'm launching them now, one each week. And, it's just people giving words of wisdom or words of advice or words of encouragement or, hey, I'm struggling too. And this is what I'm doing. Why don't you try this and see if it helps you? You know? So here's the hope, and it really kind of revolutionizes the way we look at mental health. But it also is the messenger too. I have people who work for the suicide hotline that are also manning my messenger. So if anybody reaches out, because I am not certified and I'm not a doctor, and I would not take it that burden without being properly prepared. I can't hold somebody's life in my hand like that.
Yeah.
I can't. So I do have them manning the inbox. So if anybody reaches out, they're right there on it. And I think it takes it that next level. Because instead of being on the phone, I'm now looking at your Facebook. I'm looking at your likes, your dislikes, your family, your friends, where you are, to make it easier for me to list the things that you should be here for. Like, well, wait, what about this? What about this? What about this? Without having to pry for information or try to relate to someone that you might not relate to, even as a suicide hotline worker. I've made two attempts in my life, and that's mostly because I'm a borderline. The first time was because I was undiagnosed borderline personality disorder. I felt agony all the time, and I had no idea why. It was like anything to get rid of that. It kind of feels like you want to rip your skin off when that happens. They compare it to third-degree burn victims with the level of sensitivity that you have. Um, but even with two attempts under my belt, I don't think I could relate. I couldn't. And I don't know if that would affect how my mental state would be, because I feel things very deeply, you know. And I've lost a stepbrother to suicide, and I've lost an ex to suicide, an ex who reached out to me that night. But I was angry. I was like, I don't want to talk to you. Stop calling me. Cursed him out, hung up the phone, and I got a call the next morning. He was dead. That was him reaching out, like the reach out call, and that I didn't take it. And I don't want that to ever be my
Right.
responsibility again. And it's
I
not that none of my
understand.
friends can reach out or people can't reach out to me. It's just that I don't want me to be your final step. Just
Yeah. I
because
have a coworker, a young, sweet man. It was a coworker, and he was coming to me for a couple of weeks with his problems. Just out of the blue, he just started coming to me,
yeah,
and I helped him with the legal issue he had. It was resolved. He was so happy that morning. And then, almost quitting time, I noticed a change in him. And in fact, that morning I had like a premonition. We were working on a pipeline with my husband, and we have these meetings outside every morning with the boss. And during that meeting, I stepped back and I whispered to my husband, I said, one of us isn't going to be here in the morning. One of us standing here is going to be dead. And I don't know who. It was just a strong feeling. And then I pointed to that guy that ended up committing suicide that night and this other guy, and I said, it's going to be one of them.
yeah,
And I don't know if this one's going to kill that one or what's going to happen, but something. And then the next morning, we got a call that wanted committed suicide. They've been coming to me talking. And so then you think, what could have I said?
nothing, nothing. But you do, you're right. There's guilt and there's shame. I couldn't save them. And they came to me and they made it my responsibility and I couldn't do it. They believed in me and I couldn't do it. You know, that is a worthless feeling again. It's very hard to be in those situations. Why I said, like, I have been the final step for a couple people and I have brought them back. I have saved them. But to me, that's not enough because there was one that I couldn't.
Right.
And I mean, excuse me, even in the case of my little sister was hurting for a very long time, very long time. That's why we related so much because I was in pain too. And I think she was the only one I told as much of my story as I did before now, and I didn't tell her the whole thing. I just told her about being kidnapped and what happened in the car. And she sat and she listened at 16 years old. This girl, I was 26. We took I was a heavy weed smoker at the time, and she was a smoker too. And we kind of went on a drive and we just talked. And it just came out like vomit. And after I was like, I told somebody, like, and my little sister of all people I've burdened with this information, but she was like, thank you for telling me, you know, like, no, I know, like, if I'm in that kind of situation, not to get in the car, if I'm offered a ride, I'm not taking it. She's now I understand why you freak out when I say I got a ride from a friend or a ride from my friend's friend or. Um, so yeah, it was kind of like a bonding experience, but for her, she was in a lot of pain. She lost her mom at a very young age, very, of an overdose. And her little brother was taken, you know, she just had a very rough childhood. Not a bad one necessarily, but She was loved, very loved, but it wasn't enough. You know, she used to write on the walls about her mom, and there was some very serious mental illness that needed to be addressed and was never addressed. My dad did not believe in therapy. Do I think it would have saved her? Maybe. I would never know, but not addressing it is a major issue. So yeah, I almost lost her too, and I feel like it was suicide, to be honest. There's no way around it.
Well, it sounds like you are doing something positive
Yeah.
and doing all you can to help people that might be going through it now. And we help ourselves and we help others, you know. I
Yeah.
think that's why I did foster care for so long, because it kept me busy. I was thinking about other people and their problems all the time.
Yeah.
And then when it got quiet and I had to think about my own after the kids was all grown, I'm
Yeah.
like, that's when I started writing the book because
Like
I
this
couldn't
is a
deal with all
mess.
that. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. You
That's
got to
kind
get it
of
out and hope it helps somebody. And
yeah, that's why we
so,
need in the hospital. So you have to turn inward and you're like, ew. I did an episode with a good friend of mine that I met through doing these interviews. Her name was Sheridan. And we were talking about the moldy chicken in the fridge and how the things that we don't want to look at inside of ourselves, that's our moldy chicken. Nobody's going to touch the moldy chicken because it was our job to take out the moldy chicken. Okay. And we can put as much food as we want into the fridge, but that's going to keep getting spilled over, rot and poison because we're not taking out the moldy chicken. And until we take out the mold, it's going to continue to spread to everything we put into it. And I just thought that was a great analogy for kind of
yeah,
doing that inner work. So,
yeah,
so
yeah.
she came up with that. I was like, that's genius,
That, that is, that is.
Yeah.
Take it out. Get
Yeah.
rid of it.
Take out the chicken or take out the trash. Yeah.
And it takes a lot of talking to get rid of one thing.
Yeah.
You know, one time we tell it, there, it's out. Well, guess what? It's going to resurface. I compared it to this record player that was broke. They kept putting right back on. Oh, you're too young to remember record players, but right
I
back on
remember
the same.
playing.
Okay, put back on the same old song that nobody wants to hear. You don't want to hear it, but it keeps replaying or replaying, and it's like, how do I get off this record player?
Yeah.
And so that's why I wrote mine.
Yeah. I think it's something I'm going to work on now. Right now, I'm rewriting that book I told you I wrote in my early 20s from a 30-year-old perspective. And I'm a little healed and a little less toxic. And that's what I base my comedy around too. And I use the term hoe because it is derogatory. I want it to catch your attention so that I can tell you why I'm top tier, and why you should look at me that way because I'm open about my sexuality and who I am as a person. I have no filter. I have had a filter and a mask for so long that I
Right,
almost became that mask. And I refuse to do anything to sugarcoat or mirror other people's behaviors again, ever.
right.
You can take it or you can leave it. See ya.
Yeah.
So, and people love that energy. So that's just what I preach through my show. It's self and sexual empowerment. You know,
Isn't
I
it
love
great
it.
to finally to be able to give yourself permission to be authentic,
Yeah. And you know what?
to
It
be
took
who you
me,
are?
and it took me losing the people that I thought would always support me to do that. I lost a lot of family during this entire year with the attempt, with the drug usage beforehand, with the behaviors after, because we don't realize, especially for me, I have a lot of mental health conditions, that our behaviors affect everyone around us. And we're not the only ones suffering with symptoms. They're suffering from the behaviors that come from symptoms, you know? Um, and unfortunately, me, when I was getting on meds and I was trying to get stabilized and things were still kind of rocky, my family was just like, you got to go back to work. You got to keep going. You're going to lose this and lose that and lose that. I was like, I'd rather lose it because I'm not going to keep working and ignoring what happened and how I feel. I need to deal with this and I need to take the time to do so. 2 weeks in a hospital is not enough to handle all of this, especially with the kid, taking him to and from school and still keeping on that. I'm very proud of myself because that never faltered. He still went to school. We still did the homework. We still did everything we had to do while I was here at home trying to figure myself out. People who don't have trauma to the level that, say, me or you do, will never understand what it means to find yourself. Like, yeah, they may find out what they like and what they don't like, but they've never had to find their entire identity. They've only had to find their purpose. We have to find our identity and then think about a purpose. from the identity that we pieced together from what used to be there. It's totally different, and there's so many more layers that people don't realize when it comes to trauma and when it comes to especially sexual assault. Sexual assault, I personally think that was worse than the attempted murder portion. It's like murder's cut and dry. You think I'm worth nothing. That doesn't necessarily mean I'm worth nothing. But when you're raped repeatedly and used like you mean nothing, you feel it inside. Like that happened to me because I'm not worth anything. I wasn't worth rescuing, you know? I wasn't worth teaching not to put myself in that position. Because in your head, you put yourself in that position. Even though you did it, it's not your fault. I know now it wasn't my fault. I'm sure you know now that wasn't your fault. But then it was in our head entirely our fault. That the self-hatred that comes from it. Even if it's not full hatred, just the lack of love for yourself and the feeling like you deserved it and the entire loss of who you are as a person. Because you don't want to be that person anymore. That person got attacked. That person, whatever they do, led them to getting attacked. So you're not going to be that person anymore because that person, that's what's going to keep happening to them. So you got to be something else, completely different, or whatever behavior you feel you need to change, you change. And that's what comes with the loss of identity. You start mirroring people and their behaviors. Well, she does great. She's never had trauma. She never gets in trouble. I'm going to mirror what she does. And then you lose who you are over time. It takes a
Yeah.
lot to build that back up.
Yeah. There's a
And
lot of layers to the
yeah,
healing. And when you're doing it in silence by yourself, we're just making it harder.
yeah. I do not recommend anybody do what I did with my trauma narrative. I should have been seeing my therapist for that. I should have been doing it in sessions, but she could have guided me in a way where it wasn't an absolute shock. I did it like ripping off a band-aid. I sat there for an entire extended weekend. My son was gone, and I sat in my room. I even ordered food in and ate in my room. Like I did not leave my room because I locked myself in my door and I shut down and I had notebooks and I just kept writing it over and over and over again because I would not accept that I did not have answers because of flashbacks that I've had in the hospital from triggering. I was like, when did that happen? What is that? We're going to find out what that is. And it answered every question I had about what happened up until that point. But it took me a long time to recover from that, the shock. I'm sure when you go into it, you're reliving it. You're there. You're feeling it. You're
I
experiencing
had
it.
I had found a notebook 20 years ago on PTSD. It was a workbook, and you start in, and it says anytime that gets too difficult to stop.
Oh,
And I kept putting it away. I would hide it in the closet. I didn't want anybody to see what I'd been writing in this notebook. I would hide it and I'd bear it with clothes, and then I
I
would
burned
get it
mine.
out. Huh?
I burned
Did you?
them, all the
Did
copies.
you?
Yeah.
And yeah, I ended up throwing it away. And then over time, I would start to just write in notebooks. Oh, he wants to hear this. But there was something about me that felt I needed to get it out. Like I knew nobody wanted to hear it from me. Like we heard this before. We don't know if we believe it. We already heard one story about it. They all assumed the man that kidnapped me was black. And I lived in Southeast Ohio in the 70s, and everybody assumed it was willing because I didn't say that, because I didn't say no, right? I assume. And so I got beat up by my family, knocked out cold because you are an inward lover.
Yeah.
And my first husband, I got married at 18, his family was the same way. I was that. And so you deserve to get treated like those people do. And so I learned a lot about what it's like to be black, even though I wasn't black, because they say we are to treat you like you are black because you did that. And so
Yeah.
I let everybody believe what they wanted to believe. I wouldn't tell anybody what the truth was, what happened, because inside I wanted them to choke on it. I wanted them to choke on their prejudice and their hate. And I wasn't going to open up to those people and tell them because they would say, oh, you're just saying this because blah, blah. And I wouldn't tell
Yeah.
nobody, it wasn't there. They wasn't privy to that information.
I think
And
it's kind of like
so,
that for me
yeah,
too, for my family, because it was like, now you're just saying that because of your behaviors. You're making excuses. No, this is what genuinely happened, but now you don't deserve the information. So now you just get to stay in the dark while I tell everybody else what happened. And now you can just feel stupid on your own. So, It's kind of like that feeling, like you're getting some kind of justice. In my head, anyway.
Yeah. Yeah.
You're a lot more healed than I am. So, you know.
Well, yeah. And I did get an apology from him, actually.
Wow.
When I had run away. That's why I ended up in the car with him. A friend said, "This is my cousin. He will take you to your dad's that lives out of the town to avoid the abuse that was happening with my stepdad." And then I got kidnapped and raped instead. So they put me in a home for runaways. They called it the open door home. And it was for the bad kids. And you're told that if you do one thing wrong, you'll go to juvenile detention till you're 18. Like you might as well committed murder, like you're that bad of a person for running away because you don't want to be killed, right? And then you get kidnapped and raped. And so life goes on. But so he came with that cousin, that friend of mine that had him drive me. They come to the group home, which he got statutory rape. So right there's a restraining order. He's not allowed to be there. And they show up to the door, and the staff comes and says, "Peggy, you got visitors." And I went to the door, and here is this guy and my friend and her boyfriend. And I go outside. I'm like, "What are you doing here? You know, you were charged as a restraining order. You're not supposed to be around me." And she's saying, "Oh, he likes you. He wants to marry you." And I said, "He raped me. He kidnapped me." "I know. He knows it. And he's sorry, but he wants you to marry him. He just likes you is all." And he gave me this ugly turquoise jewelry. And I just took it as evidence. I took it in and I showed him. I said, "Look, you know, he was charged statutory rape. There was a restraining order. Why are you guys even, you know, letting him come to the door? And here's the evidence, you know, that he was here." And like, "Oh, we don't know what you're talking about." So, but yeah, it's a whole other story. But later on, my mother, when I got sent back home, she knew my stepdad was going to kill me. This is why I ran away. So now he really hates me, and so he's going to kill me. And so he told the police he was going to kill me. That's why they put me in this home. But so she took me with put me with my brother, who was always trying to sexually abuse me. He's married and got kids, and I won't go in the house because I told his wife, if I go in the house, he will rape me, my brother. I said, "I'm not going in the house. I'll sleep outside. I'll sleep out in the woods. You know, my mom dumped me off here, but I'm not going in there." And so I didn't know who to call. So I called my friend again. And who does she bring? Her cousin that kidnapped me and her boyfriend. And so now I'm in this car and I'm thinking, of all the people in the world that I call to help me, is my rapist has to be in the vehicle. They kidnapped me. And I'm like, this is pretty bad. You know, you think of your dad and your mom, your aunts and uncles, all these people you could go to for help. But who do I have? I have my kidnapper and rapist in this vehicle. And so they started taking me somewhere. They said, "We know somebody where you can stay." And I'm like, wait a minute. Take me back. And I'm going to end up and tell my mom I got to go home. You know, my stepdad can just kill me because I'm not going to stay with the rapist boyfriend. I'm not going to stay with the rapist kidnapper in this car either. What's my choices here? They got two rapists and somebody wants to kill me. I'll take the one that wants to kill me, my stepdad. So I went back.
Short, sweet, and to the point.
Yeah, choices, options. But so I did get to tell him off though. When we was in that vehicle, they stopped somewhere at a park as a playground, and I remember him coming on to me, and I'm thinking, "Are you serious? You kidnapped me, you raped me." I got to chew him out. I got that chewing out, and I was like, "Don't you ever touch me? Don't you ever come near." So I did get that, you know, justice if there's justice. And actually, a cousin a couple years ago, I got talking to him. I hadn't seen him in years, and he said, "I know him." He said, "I'm going to go kill him for you right now." I was like, "Oh, no. You don't go kill here. You don't go killing people for my sake." And so my husband had to call him because I got really nervous. Is he really going to do that? And so I called a friend of mine as a cop. I was like, "What do I do? I think he might do it." And then I'm going to be in trouble because I told him no. I'm like, "Oh, anxiety, right?" So my husband calls my cousin. He says, "Don't you do that." He said, "They were kids. It was a long time ago. You know, he was charged. Just let it go." He's okay. I'm like, I don't need this to resurface in a murder case and I get in trouble. This, you know, I mean, so.
I don't even think I'd curse out the guy if I ever saw him again. You know, I wouldn't even dignify him with a response, to be honest.
Yeah.
I'd probably just spit in his face, to be honest, and just walk off. Yeah. That's like the highest form of disrespect for me, is spitting in someone's face. So,
yeah. You never know. Somebody listening at some point say, "Wait a minute, I lived there and this guy did this to me, the exact same thing." And you never know.
So I hope somebody has an experience. Maybe we could track them down. Not because I want somebody else to ever go through that, but maybe so we can find them. That'd be great. I hope
Yeah.
he's dead. I'm divinely protected. I know something happened to him already. He got his. I don't have to have vigilante justice. You
And
know?
for him to hear you guys both heard it, something in the woods, and made him take off, and for you to see the spirit, whoever it was, this led you out of the woods. I mean, you had divine intervention, the same as I did. When I just prayed, I wouldn't even hear, and then I was just taken up, and I didn't experience. You had to endure that. I had to endure the one a few months before that, the two guys, the one that jumped out of the bushes, and that I had to endure. I went through that, and it was this close to happening. I thought it was over with, and I didn't think I had one last breath of me to scream, and then I seen this great big guy come out on the porch, and they called him Bear, and I screamed help, and he walked so slowly. I was like, move your ass, you're walking so slowly. You hear a girl yelling for help in a field, and could you walk any slower? Get your butt over here, because it was just about to happen. And both of them were holding me down, and I have 4 hands on me, and both were ready to do it. And he came, and he told him to get off me. And the guy says, his name was Jerry Gossett, I'll say his name. He said, she wants it. I said, do I look like I want it? Yeah, 2 of you grown men holding this little 70-pound girl down. Do I effing look like I want it? Scream at the top of my lungs. But yeah. But I didn't tell that either, because I would have got my sister in trouble. I told somebody the next day that had the trailer that she was staying at, and my sister says, oh, she dreamt it, and she's been talking about that all morning. She just didn't want them to get in trouble, because this Jerry guy had married our stepsister and got her pregnant. She had a baby, and he didn't want to mess up that little happy family, right? So just keep baby sister's attempted rape quiet. So yeah, but we keep quiet for all kinds of reasons. Like, I didn't want my sister to get in trouble. My stepsister, she just got married and had a baby. What's going to happen to them? Everybody's going to blame me because I was out walking along that road at night. I had been smoking pot and drinking, so it's my fault because I was partying, right? We just take on this shame to just keep it quiet. But then years later, I actually met that Jerry Gossett. His brother Joel was the other one holding me down. I met their older brother Jim, and I told him about it, and he says, I remember that happening. He said everybody was talking about it, and everybody was mad at them for that happening to me. Well, I didn't know that, but everybody knew it.
Nobody told you.
Yeah. And I wasn't in that circle. That was my sister's circle of friends. I just happened to spend the night with my sister. But yeah, I mean, if anybody's listening, just tell. What do I say? I say tell, and let the chips fall where they may. Tell the truth, and let the chips fall where they may. We can't control what's going to happen after we let it out of the bag.
Yeah.
Just let it happen.
Right. And get help. Talk to someone.
Yeah.
Speak up. Speak out.
And if you don't like your therapist, get another one.
That's right.
Don't stick with somebody that. Right.
It is not one size fits all. And you know what? You might have to try 4, 5, 6 till you find the one that, works for you. Some of us need one that tell us, you're so brave, you're so strong. You went through that. Very soft and encouraging. And then you have people like me who need, so are we going to keep dwelling on this, or what are we going to do to fix it? That jump starter to get you to say, okay, this happened. Yes, I am brave. Yes, I am strong. But I am not treating myself like I believe that. What am I going to do to fix this? That's the two kind of different levels. For me, I can't have somebody who coddles me. I need somebody who's going to put like the fire, All right. You get 10 seconds of coddling, let's go. Let's get it up. Let's get going.
Because when we tell it, we're reliving it, and we're in that survivor mode. And that might not be a nice person. That's not going to be somebody with a tissue who sits there and cries. This is going to be somebody that's really mad. You might be dealing with my anger, that maybe you've never experienced anger. Like I didn't experience anger for years and years and years. And then when I did, I'm like, what do we do with this? I never had this. I wish I would have had it back then. I just laid there and took shit, you know? But so if I went to counseling, they're going to be dealing with somebody that's angry because that person has a voice and that quiet person don't.
Yeah, I really don't get angry still. But I'm also borderline, so I have an emotion wheel in my phone. Like I don't get emotions very well. I don't understand them. Um, but yeah, I'm not an angry person because I
I
know
wasn't either.
this was even before my trauma because I had um trauma before that where if I got angry, I would black out and I took fighting. Like I would mess somebody up. So it was really for their safety. If I felt myself getting too angry, I'd
Hmm.
walk off. And I'd always like heard faint music when I'd feel something very extremely. I didn't know what it was until I got my diagnosis. I'm like, oh, that's not like everybody doesn't have that. Like for me, it's
What's
like
the
a
fake?
warning.
What's the fake music about?
So I hear sounds, I hear music. It's part of a psychosis symptom. It's not really there, but for me, I love it because number one, I love classical music. It's like violins and like pianos, like little faint, kind of like you hear your phone ringing in another room and you're not sure. It's kind of like that, but I only hear it when I feel a very heightened sense of emotion, like very angry or very
It's in a
happy,
calming
very
music.
sad. It I don't really know how to describe it. It's just sounds that I hear. I put it together like a symphony, but it's not. It's nothing that I know. It's no like Beethoven, it's no Mozart. It's just
Because I
random.
would take that as like a sign from God, like
Well,
chilling me out.
no, I take it as a sign that I am feeling something very heightened. It's a warning. It's kind of like when you play a video game and you go into a certain area and you hear the boss level music. It's just like that. And I go, whoa. When I hear it, first I check if it's my phone. Then if it's not, I'm like, okay, what am I feeling right now? And then I'm pulling up my wheel and I'm going, okay, I'm not suicidal right now. I'm disappointed. Those are two different levels. You don't want to die. You just didn't want what just happened to have happened the way it did. You're disappointed. And then it kind of brings myself back. It helps me recognize with my borderline, I flip emotions and moods very, very often. Could be every 5 minutes, could be every 30 seconds. You never know. I could be sitting here smiling and then I'm crying and I'm making a suicide plan. It flips so rapidly that having that warning is actually really a good thing for me.
Yeah, it
It really
sounds
has
like it.
helped me. Yeah, and I know that sounds absolutely insane, but
No, I
I
think it sounds beautiful. It's
yeah,
something that's
I
been
think it's a gift.
created for,
Yeah,
yeah, a gift.
I believe that wholeheartedly that it's a gift. And I read energies really well for people. Like I can feel when people are really depressed when they're out. You could tell just by the way they stand or by the way they stare or by the way they look like they're in the conversation, but they're not. They're not even in there. And I'll
Right.
go up and I'll say, because I'm a comedian, I'll go up and I'll say something crazy. Like, hey, that turtle said to turn left down the next block. And they're like, what? Then I just disappear. I'm gone. But they're thinking about what just happened and they're not in the same mindset. So it kind of like transfers that energy to something else. And now they're back in the conversation because now they're recognizing, hey, I was in a conversation this whole time. Like, oh yeah, I was here doing this with people. How long was I gone? Because a lot of people suffer from that, the daydreaming and the just getting lost in your head. They call it being in your bag. It happens a lot. So
Yeah.
I always recommend people do that. I'm like, just go up to somebody you see looking sad at a bar, and point at them and say, hey, this guy gave me the best time of my life last night. Scream it. People are going to look. And then they're going to look at him. He's going to leave you like you're crazy, but he's not going to be looking at his glass like it's his last one he ever wants to have. And sometimes it, it might change a life. You might save one, and you never know. So I like to read energies
Interesting.
and, you're gonna do that now. She's gonna go out tomorrow and look for she's gonna look
No,
for somebody like that guy looks sad.
no, I pick up on people's emotions more than I want to the point I just have to stay away because I
Yeah,
take them on so much
yeah,
and
you can't
carry them
handle it.
around and have to I cleanse myself to get rid of them. And
Yeah, you
I
just gotta transfer it back out. That's all.
yeah.
I think
And I
so.
told my husband, I think maybe it's where like my stepdad knocked me out cold one time when I come to. My mom and my brother and my disabled sister were sitting in the living room watching TV. And I'm thinking, how much time just went by? And even though I'm across the room, it's like I zoomed in to every little flick of their eye, expression on their face, because my life depended on it. I
Yeah.
thought, they now know I'm alive because I'm awake. Are they going to come finish me off? So every little blink of their eye and expression was telling me if I'm going to live or die. And so I said, I don't think you undo that kind of intense
Mm,
observation. And so I automatically intensely observe when people that I'm talking to.
yeah. See, for me, I was in the dark. It was nighttime. So I couldn't read any expressions. You know, I just felt. So I
And you
feel
had your eyes
things. And
closed.
yeah. But even if I didn't, it was dark.
Yeah.
What was I making out in the middle of the woods in the Poconos at night? You know, it wasn't like super dark out. But I mean, by the time I left, yeah, it was like middle of the night, I have to assume. But when we first were going into the woods, the sun was just like starting to set when we pulled off for the last time, when we were like getting off the highway. Because I remember it was like just starting to really get settled in, I guess you could say, nighttime. Because and I only realized that by having a trigger by accident. Because it was before I even did my trauma narrative, and that's when I realized I could not be in the car with men at night. Um, because I triggered really hard twice, actually. Once 2 years in 2021, actually, during the time I was kind
I
of like in the
can't
blackout
handle
period.
a man, even my husband, coming up behind me and standing over my shoulder,
See, me,
looking
it's
over
in
my
front.
shoulder. I can't do it.
I can't do the don't approach me. I will approach you. Do not like move quickly towards me because I will like I don't flinch or anything. I'm not one of those. Like I will I got challenged. Like you know what I mean? Now like that fight or flight is a
Yeah.
real thing. But I think a lot of time people forget too that there's more than just fight or flight. There's fight, flight, fawn, and freeze. And fawn is the one that most people struggle with without even realizing. It's where we're overly pleasing a situation because we perceive that there's a danger there that may or may not be there, you know. So that's a big part of why I'm doing the mental health education too, because people need to realize this, you know. We overly mirror and people please, you know. I'm sure you're a victim of that too, where you're overly pleasing more than you know you should, just because you're like, I don't want any problems. But there are no problems. There wouldn't have been a problem if you didn't, you know.
Yeah. I overhelp. Like, like, when am I going to stop over helping everybody? Because nobody helps me, nor would I ever ask for help.
Right.
That's just
Yeah.
not me. But
Yeah.
I'm over helping in everybody's business.
Because
And
and I can tell you why that is. This is my perspective, of course. Number one, we don't ask for help because the one time we did need help, no one answered the call. And for two, we overly help people because we don't ever want somebody to be in that position like we were. So we will always be, there's at least one person who would have helped you, and that was me, you know? But it's finding the balance and not pouring from an empty cup and, you know, not using it as a way to avoid dealing with yourself and how you're feeling and your emotions. You know, that's the balance and that's the struggle. But I really feel like that's why we do it because nobody answered our call. So I'm never going to ask for anything again. I don't
yeah,
need
it's
support.
like
I'll do it
we're
myself.
always helping that girl, the one that needed it. We're always helping her. The child in us. We're always helping them. Nobody helped us, so we're going to help this one and these other thousands right behind them. And at the end of the day, nobody helps us because we've never needed help. We've always been the one out here helping.
Well,
So
we've
the day
needed it.
you
We
ever
just don't
need
ask
help,
for it.
you're out, nobody knows how to help you because you've never had to help anybody for anything because you've always taken care of all the problems for them.
Yeah. And it's
That's
not
where
that we
I'm at.
didn't need help, even when we needed it. We didn't want to be disappointed because we knew in our head, no one's coming. No one's helping. You know,
Right.
no one's coming to save the day. There's a brand that I love. It's called No Prince Charming. It's an apparel brand. But their slogan is "This princess saves herself," and it's about for domestic violence victims. But I love it. It's like the glass slipper, shattering glass ceilings, and like really women stepping up and saying, you know what? No, nobody did come to save me, but guess what? I did it myself. You know, and it's learning to balance that so that it's not toxic, to yourself, because I'm still struggling with that. I do not ask for help and I get very uncomfortable. And I feel like a piece of when people will help me. So I'm like pathetic in my head. Like, I didn't need your help. I didn't ask for it. I'm one of those. I didn't ask for it. No, obviously I'm like, I'm grateful, but like, I didn't ask for your help. I'm like, no,
Right.
you didn't ask. I'm doing it because I care. I'm like, who? What? Like, you don't believe it, You're
Yeah.
like, care. Like,
Don't do victim
about me?
status.
Right? Like about me? Like, you care about me. Like, I know I care about you and I'd do anything for you, but you care about me? Like, that's a thing?
Like that's new. I don't know how to do this.
And I'm still struggling with that. I just had this conversation with my best friend of over 20 years yesterday. She was like, if this happens, in a situation I'm in, then this is what we're going to do. And I was like, why would you do that? She was like, well, you would do that for me, right? I was like, well, yeah, of course. And she was like, so that's why I would do it for you because I love you, you're my sister. And I was like, oh, okay. Like, and I'm still like weirded out by the whole situation. I'm like, okay. I'm not used to like getting anything in
You mean it
return.
goes both ways, not just that way?
Right. Like, you mean it's not a one-way street of like me just constantly giving and never getting in return? Like, weird, but okay. Okay. Like, you don't believe it. I still don't believe it. We have a hard time believing that people actually care because we have a hard time believing that I guess we're worth something or that we're human. I've never quite felt human. Thanks. I still don't. It's not like I feel like an angel, like I'm flying down on people. No, I just don't feel like a human. I
Really?
don't, yeah, I don't feel things the same. I don't behave the same. I don't react to things the same way. I don't have any of the behaviors of a standard or average person. So I don't even consider myself to be a person. Now I consider myself a menace to mankind.
Medicine?
No, a menace to mankind.
Menace? A menace? Yeah, but you're helping people. I mean, you have your
Yeah,
podcast, you're doing interviews, and
I consider myself to be a guide more than a
that's
human.
good. That's
I mean,
better.
I don't classify that as a human being. I just classify that as a guide, like a light, like a literal piece of light just floating around. You know,
Boost your self-esteem.
yeah.
You've got
Oh,
to.
myself, listen, I know I am a 10 out of 10. I am top tier. It's not a self-esteem thing. It's
Okay.
really not. Because trust me, there ain't nobody who loves me more than me. I spent way too long hating myself. I look at myself in the mirror every day and I'm going, yes, girl. Even when I look gross, I'm like, you look a little rough, but you still look good though. I have really high confidence. And
Good.
and it trust me when I say that. You'll see 10 seconds of my anything I post, and you're like, okay, like this girl needs to calm down. She's doing a bit much, because I do. I love myself that much, but I don't, I still don't consider myself to be human. I don't. I feel like that kind of left me. Yeah.
Job I had years ago, some women told me, well, you sure love yourself. I said, well,
Hell
somebody's
yeah.
got to.
All right. Yeah.
What?
I'm like,
Just
you don't
because
love
you all
yourself?
can't stand me? Do you think I'm not going to can't stand me? No. I'm going to love myself more because somebody's got to.
That's right. That's
So,
right. Top tier, always. Period. And that's what I teach people. I don't want to curse, but I call it like bad B word, big D word energy. That's what I say to people all the time. And they laugh, but then they sit back and they go, I'm like, yeah, big energy about yourself. When I walk into a room, everybody is in that room for me. It doesn't matter what we're there for. Like, it doesn't matter if I don't even belong in that room. I could walk in the wrong classroom. It doesn't matter. Everybody's in that classroom to look at me right now. Everybody. It's me. I know you've all been waiting. I'm sorry I was late. Like, that's in my head. That's how I feel. And some people may see that as narcissistic or grandiose, and that's not true. That is not true. I don't think I'm better than anyone. I just know that I am top tier. And if you feel threatened by that, then that means that you don't believe that you are top tier. And that's something that you need to fix
I
because you
think
should.
when we get down in a hole, we dig ourselves up. We have to put ourselves on a pedestal.
Yeah.
We have to build ourselves up and encourage ourselves because we can't stay down there forever.
That's
We've
right.
got to pull it up and get our big girl panties on and get to business.
Yeah. And
So,
J.K. Rowling actually is one of my favorite quotes about that. She said, rock bottom became the foundation where I built the rest of my life. And there's nothing better, more cut and dry than that.
Well, this is my book, and you see the flower growing out from under the hard soil. It's called The Will of a Wildflower, and it's about having the will to survive under the harshest environment. You just push through and just keep going.
Tenacity.
So, yeah.
I love it.
And pure sass.
Pure sass. Yeah, I said that for a long time. I was like, I think I'm still here out of spite. Like, especially in those periods where I was like really excessive with my vices and things like that. I was like, I'm literally just alive out of spite right now. It's like, how far can I take it before, whatever higher powers up there, like, all right, come on now. Come on, knock it off. And then they did with the hospital. And I was like, all right, fine. Like, I'll get it together, whatever.
I'm constantly fighting injustice, like everywhere, like every job I've had, and even still to this day, I filed a civil rights complaint last week. I'm constantly fighting injustice, and I told my husband, I never win, but they're going to know I was here.
The menace to mankind, just like me, and I love it. Mostly for me is mostly men though. Like I still like there are men that I truly respect, 95% of them I do not. And it's especially when they try to assert dominance to me, because I'm 5'2". I am not, and I have a very threatening aura. I've been told many times. I am very intimidating because I am loud, I am straightforward, and I have no filter. I will tell you straight like it is and how it is when it happens to your face, not in a rude way. It's not to hurt your feelings, but it's a reality. This is my perspective and I'm going to share it. And I always say that this is my perspective, but but this is what's going on right now. You're kind of a douchebag, or the guys, the alpha guys, really. It's those ones. Because I am very heavy in like BDSM lifestyles. Alpha.
Now, what is that? I heard you say that a couple times before. What's that? BDSM?
BDSM is an umbrella term for any and all kind of kink play or lifestyles. So like dom and sub relationships, masochism, sadism.
My youngest adopted son and his wife, they're into that. Like they got these chokers and these chains and that kind of stuff.
It's a power and control. So with BDSM, you could have what's called a TPE or total power exchange. That's where you make an agreement. It's literally like a contract. This is when we can do this. This is what you have full control over. And I will be completely submissive to you because that's what they want. That's what they're getting some kind of pleasure out of that.
Isn't that like imitating rape?
No. Now there is a kink for consensual, non-consensual, but it is all contracted and in an agreement first. And there's always a safe word. So with a submissive, what a lot of people don't understand with BDSM is there is a dominant, and yes, he has the power of the situation, but the submissive is the one in control because at any time she could say stop and everything halts, period.
Now, did I hear you right earlier? You say you do not enjoy sex. Did I hear you say that?
I didn't say that, girl. I did not say that. I don't have a romantic attachment to it. There's no romance to it for me. I'm not like looking in your eyes. We're not like kissing and like you're not snuggling me after spending the night. Like I give you a high five, a pat on the butt and say, good job, champ. And then you need to get out. I keep a roster. These are select people. We sign NDAs.
I'm judging right now because I'm a senior citizen and I'm like, this is so unhealthy.
And you know what? It is, but it isn't. And it's a lot of what I teach in my book, my whole handbook. Keeping a roster is a good way to explore and be promiscuous in a safe way.
What's a roster?
A roster is like a team, basically. Let's say this is
booty call team, like speed dial.
Mm-hmm. So I keep four on my roster, and that's in case I need somebody in the first 1 to 2 to 3 don't answer. There's always somebody who's going to answer within the 4. We do not speak outside of play. We are not friends. We don't follow each other on social media. I don't care about you. You don't care about me. You are there to fill a physical need, and then you need to go. And a lot of that for them is not necessarily a trauma. Some people just have really busy lives and don't have time for the relationship and don't want to hurt somebody who may get emotionally invested. So they do it this way instead. You're being straightforward and honest. I don't want to be your friend. I don't want a relationship with you. I respect you to some degree. And this is
Well,
what it
my
is.
youngest adopted son, his wife are into that and bringing in people in the house, and they got these
Well,
sites that they are getting paid to for people to watch them do this thing. The
yeah, it's
problem,
voyeurism. Yeah,
oh, well, of
that's
course,
what it
I'm
is.
just thoroughly disgusted because I'm a grandma, right? I'm a great grandma, and so this is like, well, our their daughter, my granddaughter, she was sexually abused.
It's a lot of traumatized women that are into BDSM,
But I mean,
believe it or not.
she's 4, and somehow somebody she got sexually abused. And I warned them when I found out they were doing this. I warned them and I said, this is going to end up happening to these kids because they're bringing in these sex addicts. To me, they're sex addicts. Okay. That's my hang up. To me, they're bringing in these people and these children in this home and they're going to end up sexually abused. Well, the
Oh
kids got
no,
removed for something and the little girl happened to be bruised and red. And, so I don't know.
well, that I don't agree with. So for me, I have a child. I do not bring any of that to my home. The only people I
Yeah,
bring
I
to
mean,
my
I
home
feel
are the
like
ones,
if you got kids, don't be bringing that in your
yeah,
house.
I do bring roster members to my house, but these people have been on my roster for years. And I have NDAs with their full name, address, everything, contract, everything. I know everything about them. I just don't care to get into the personal lives or feelings. I know everything about them. I don't bring anybody into my house that I can't kill with my bare hands because of my PTSD. When I'm branching out and I'm like meeting new people in a BDSM style or kink play, I'll go to a sex club. And I know you're probably like, "Ugh." It's not what you think it is. It's literally, you can't take your
I've
phone
been
in.
married 25
It's very
years.
private. Well, it's very private. You can't take phones in, so no one can be recording you. And I used actually did a lot to study. I did a lot of studying of human behavior and like people in relationships and how they respond, people that are single when they go there and how they respond, people in different sexual situations, how they respond. You can tell who's traumatized, who's not, who's got issues, who does not, who is self conscious and who is not. And honestly, I love to study. I love to read people. It's how I wrote my book by studying people. These guidelines are not just for damaged women. These guidelines are for any women or man.
I mean, I
You
know that's
know?
a thing. I mean, I can't pretend it's not. I know it's a huge thing. My eyes just opened up when I found out the kids were doing it just a couple of months ago.
Yeah. So
So,
a lot of damaged, let's say, women are into that because they know that they are in control. So it gives them the chance to relive a situation, but this time they are in full control. And that's a healing process.
I don't think so.
Because
I will agree to disagree there.
no, and I don't do that kind of, I don't like any kind of violence or non-consent. I don't do nothing like that. I can't even watch it, to be honest. To me, everybody's different though. So there's another woman I met actually just last night. She is a submissive, and he'll like whip her and paddle her and stuff, but at any time she can say stop, and he will. And to her, that power is, she was just sex trafficked. She was a sex worker. So for her to be able to say stop and it stops is so therapeutic for her that this is the lifestyle she needs to live to be able to have sex and to be
Mm.
able to enjoy it, because for those of us who are abused, we don't sometimes
Oh
don't tell
no,
enjoying
you
sex.
younger generation. Yeah, I feel
But
like.
it's different ways of having therapy. That is sexual therapy instead of sitting in front of a doctor and talking about it.
See,
God helps them
I
more.
think it's sexually deviant, and I think it's unhealthy. But
Some
that's
of it
just me.
is, some of it is really deviant, but it helps people. And you know what? It is all consensual. Consent is a very, very, very big, 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 big part of BDSM. Anybody.
Because in talking
Yeah.
to you, my motherly instincts come out. Because I have kids between 27 and 42. And so you could be my daughter. And so we share this about the sexual abuse. And so my motherly instincts come out. And so what I want for you is a nice man and to get married and have more children. Those are my things
But
that
that's the
I
thing.
feel. And so you talk about this stuff. I'm like, you're not going to convince me.
But you saying that to get married and meet a nice man and have a family, that's because that's what you're conditioned to have as a standard.
Oh,
It's not the standard anymore,
I
you know?
could choose a different life. This is what I chose.
Well, absolutely. I just mean wanting that for the younger generation is because that's what you were taught and what you were lived, that's what you
No,
lived your life
no, my
by.
mom had four husbands, you know.
But your mom got married. I'm never
Oh
getting
yeah.
married, you
But
know?
she married the last three for money. They weren't for, you know, but, and so, yeah.
I
But
mean,
we're
the
just
idea
gonna,
that that's a healthy and perfect, let's say, cookie cutter life. I mean, we all expect our children to, I guess, get married and be happy. Yes, of course. But in my head, like, I would never even approach my son about it. I would let him come to that conclusion on his own. And for
well,
me,
that's what my youngest adopted son and his wife would say too. And we honestly are trying to get custody of those children because they're in foster care. And they're on meth and they're not doing anything they should be doing, their counseling or their drug rehab. Well, she did go through drug rehab, but then she used meth again. And then she called me and said, my son has a gun and he's going to kill her. And we ran up there at 10 o'clock at night and go get her and bring her here. And I realized that this mental illness and this physical illness that she's been getting all this attention is fake. She turns it on and off to suit her, and she's totally manipulating. And my son wasn't even in the house. He wasn't even nowhere near her. I mean, she was on the Facebook chat and she said, your son is right here. He's going to kill me. So as his mother, I'm thinking, oh my God, I'm going to see her get a murder right here on my phone. You know, this video chat. I'm going to see, like, I'm being traumatized.
yeah,
Okay. And then she says, they're in the attic. Who's they? Her and his girlfriend. And then she says they're outside. I'm like, you cannot go from the attic to outside without passing through that room where she's at, through the house. There was no voice of anybody there. There's no footsteps. There was no sound. Well, so I told my husband, you call the police right now. And the police come, and I hear the police are in like 2 minutes. And nobody's there. His car's not there. And then she tells me over the weekend, oh, it was just my psychosis. I imagined it.
she didn't imagine it. It was a
No,
delusion.
no, you just wanted me to come pick you up. And then I can't say the rest, but she's messaging other people wanting them to come get her, and I had to be the dummy that don't do it. So
So I will say
anyhow,
something because I have psychosis. It is really happening to her in her head. It is very hard to discern between what is reality and what is fiction sometimes. Just like what I told you with the woods. Now, has that situation ever happened? I don't know for her. Maybe she did just make it up. That could be absolutely true. Could also be the drug usage. But when it comes to psychosis, number one, manipulation is a very big symptom. Very big. Manipulation to get out of some kind of perceived danger is also a PTSD response. But with psychosis, delusions are, they feel very real. So I just want to put that out there.
yeah.
They
But like
feel
she went
real.
around my house all weekend with a cane, all bent over, talking so quiet you
Yeah,
couldn't
see,
hardly hear.
that's
But
just
then,
that's
but then
extra.
my husband said something, disagreed with her, and suddenly she could talk real loud, and she talked over him, and she got real angry. I'm like, oh, suddenly her voice can
Yeah,
be above a whisper,
yeah,
and
that's a bit
she's
different.
no longer limping around, and yeah,
Yeah, that's not even delusion at that point. That is literally
yes,
just faking for attention.
yeah.
That's a need for attention. But the hearing somebody around and stuff, I just want to point that out that that is a delusion, and that sometimes feels very real. Like the music, it's not there, but it is real to me. It is there,
But
and
that
people
is
just
helpful
can't
to you
explain it.
though, because it clues you in
Right,
to
but
what
with psychosis, that for me it's positive, but for other
really.
people it may not be. Yeah. She could have absolutely heard what happened that she explained to you could have absolutely been happening to her. There was nothing you'd be able to say. Because
Then
sometimes
her later say, "Oh, that was just my psychosis."
yeah, see that doesn't make sense. But she could have just said that was a delusion and that would have made more sense. Because it was psychosis, but it wasn't psychosis itself. It was a delusion, a symptom of psychosis. I was delusional in that
Like
moment,
one
you
day
know?
when we found out the kids removed, I went to her house, was talking to her, and she come out. She looked like a zombie. She was just
Mm.
like portraying this really crazy person. And then I said, what? You didn't go to your court hearing on the kids today? Here's the phone. Call the caseworker. She took my phone and she talks just normal to the caseworker. Oh, we didn't have transportation, blah, blah, blah.
Well, that's because she's manipulating. It's
Yeah.
manipulation.
Yeah.
But
Just manipulate.
if
Just,
she's, like you said, doing drugs,
yeah.
that can be very bad for people, like dangerous for people that are on psychosis, like have psychosis, I mean, that are diagnosed, and especially borderlines too. Borderlines, you've seen Amber Heard. Amber Heard has borderline. You know, I don't know if you kept up with that case or not. But there were a few times where she was on the stand and they were like, do you remember saying this? Do you remember doing this? Really toxic stuff, like crazy. She's like, I never did that. And she was dead set on it. And everybody was laughing because they were like, well, what does this recording say? Where it was clearly her saying or doing that. But with borderline, especially untreated and especially with drug use mixed in, we have what's called angry outbursts. There are these outbursts of anger where we snap on people because we think in black and white. You're either the hero or you're the villain, our arch nemesis, and you must go. You are the enemy. And it could flop back and forth at any time.
That's what she does.
Yeah. An FP is a fixated person, though. It's not with everybody. If
Now
it's with everybody, it's something else.
she claims she has 20 personalities. And she
That's
tried telling me
schizophrenia.
the names and I walked away. I didn't want to hear it.
She can say
Because I
10
don't believe her.
personalities
20 is what she
and
said.
she's lying. And
Yeah,
she's
I
lying.
thought she was lying. I just walked away from her. I don't want to hear that garbage. I got enough to worry about, you know? I got enough stress.
When it comes to schizophrenia, yes, they have multiple alter egos. They are not personalities. They are literally different beings in the same body. You don't know who you are when you're switching. You have no memory of what you've done sometimes. And that's with dissociative identity disorder as well. That's when you start losing track of months, days, weeks, because you're a different person.
Yeah. I've not noticed her having like not memory of anything.
Yeah,
So,
sorry, someone saying something.
but yeah, it's just fake.
Yeah,
But
when it comes to
yeah,
those more extreme mental health conditions, which for me is like DID, which is dissociative identity disorder. It's where something traumatic happens to you, to where you needed to leave. You left who you were, and now you do that every time you're triggered. But sometimes you don't come back right away. Kind of like you were out of your body. Same thing, but they don't always come back right away.
now is that part of your sexual stuff? I mean, I don't mean to get back to that, but
no, this is all mental health. This is
I mean, but I could see that a sexual dissociation from your body. Like, I could see
it's borderline is the reason that I behave the way I behave too. It's the trauma, yes, and I don't respect men, but with borderline, I have an obsessive disorder. I obsess over someone that I get an interest in. It's that FP, favorite person. Every borderline has an FP, and it doesn't have to be romantic. It could be a friend, it could be a family member, just somebody they put on a pedestal, but they are infatuated with. You're checking their social media all the time just to see what they're doing. You need to know all the time. What are they doing? Why aren't you texting me back? You left me on red. I want to die. Like literally.
is it obsessive compulsive?
It's not obsessive compulsive. I technically identify it as like an obsessive love disorder, but that's not an actual diagnosis. It's just a fixation on a person to a point where your world stops and starts with that person. It is a burden for anyone who becomes an FP of a borderline. And I know because I have destroyed many relationships. But this is the person that can trigger you very, very easily to suicidal ideation, to explosive anger like Amber Heard, but we don't remember after what happened. For me, it's like sending paragraphs and calling and calling and calling and calling. Like if our plans get canceled or you blow me off and you ghost me and you don't answer me on our plans, I will not stop calling until you respond. I will not. I can't eat. I can't sleep. I can't work. Nothing. I am on this phone and I am sending paragraph after paragraph after paragraph, and I'm calling and I'm calling, and I'm still not getting my point across no matter how many messages I send. And it usually takes someone saying, why are you doing this? What are you doing right now? And I go, oh, ew, what am I doing right now? and I'm looking down and there's like 27 missed calls, and I'm like calling 27 times, and like 10 to 15 text messages. Like, I don't know in those moments that that is not normal behavior. It's in my really weirdly wired brain. This is normal, and I need to have a response, and they will respond to me. I'm not giving them an option. And in reality, I don't get a say on whether or not they respond to me because we're not responsible for other people's behaviors.
Well, say you have a lot of insight into your personality.
It took a lot of research. It's why I made my mental health project, because I spent hours researching what the hell is borderline? What does that mean? What even is that? Like, am I dangerous? Am I a danger to everyone around me? And no, because I don't get explosive anger. I get more of the suicide ideation than anything. I get more of the really low. It's kind of like borderline. I mean, bipolar. Borderline. They have a lot of the same traits. Sorry.
You're like, am I borderline right now? Am I bipolar, or am I PTSD? Am I triggered?
You know what? And it is kind of like, I'm not bipolar. I'm just borderline, and there's psychosis and PTSD. But if you look at it like you have a road, right? And you come to a fork, that's bipolar. One or the other you're picking. Think of borderline as more like it's all one road and everything is just a mess at the end. And you're just walking straight into it and kind of trying to manage whatever it is, and you have no idea what's going on. You either feel so deeply that you can't control it or stand it, and you do anything to get rid of it.
Sounds like a foot down on the gas pedal and no brake.
Or when you go to crack a finger and it doesn't crack, and you're like, and you do anything to get it to crack. It is literally just, you're doing anything. You're bending your finger all sorts of ways, and then it hurts after. You're like, why did I do all that? You're like, I don't know. I just needed my finger to crack. Literally like that. It's why 1 out of 10 borderlines kill themselves, because they will do anything to get rid of that agony. When we don't get a text back or we're left on red from a fixated person, we literally feel grief, like we lost a sibling or a parent or a child. It is a deep agony. And if you don't have somebody for support, it's very easy to want to die. And it's very easy to start making a plan. So,
wow.
Yeah, it's
well, stick with your comedy.
Yeah, really. Well, they say it's the most painful mental health condition. So, borderline
is what?
It's what's hard to get diagnosed with. It's the most painful. The most dangerous, to be honest. Not in the form of other people, like violence, but in the form of self-violence. Yeah.
Well, I think we covered everything.
Yeah, really. I don't think there's much we can cover.
Okay. Well, I appreciate you coming on, and it's been very interesting. I hope we help somebody.
Oh, I know we will. There's been a lot of information in here, so.
Okay. All right. Well, you have a good rest of your day.
You too. Thank you.